Hello and welcome back to the Crime Reel. This week we shall be looking at the case of Linda and Charlotte Mulhall, who the Irish media so aptly branded the Scissor sisters. Linda and Charlotte were sisters from Dublin. Their parents, John and Kathleen, had married young and had 6 children together, 3 boys and 3 girls. The family lived in Kilcare Gardens, a working class area in Tulla, South Dublin. Kathleen, who had been abused by both of her parents, also suffered abuse at the hands of her husband throughout their marriage. Linda Mulhall was born in 1975. She did not do well in school, leaving without qualifications, and soon fell into a life of crime, gaining her first conviction for larceny at the age of 18, and developed both alcohol and drug addictions. She had 4 children, and when the relationship with the children's father broke down, Linda became involved with a lifelong criminal and an extremely violent man by the name of Wayne Kinsella. This relationship was also abusive, with Wayne serving a 7-year prison sentence for cruelty to Linda's children before serving an 8-year sentence for killing a pensioner and ultimately being jailed for life in 2012 after stabbing a man to death in Tyrrellstown. Linda's sister Charlotte was 8 years younger than her, having been born in Dublin in 1983. Like her sister, Charlotte had a history of drug and alcohol abuse and also racked up a number of convictions for criminal damage and public order offences. John and Kathleen's marriage eventually broke down, and in 2002, Kathleen started a relationship with a man called Farah Swali Noor. Farah had arrived in Ireland in the mid-1990s, claiming to be a Somalian who had escaped the bloodshed in Mogadishu. In fact, he was from Kenya and had invented this tragic story. In 1997, he sexually abused a young woman who became pregnant and gave birth to Farah's son. 2 other women had children by him, with both women stating that Farah had also abused them. Over the years, Farah had faced 8 separate charges of disorder, assault and sexual assault, and despite being convicted on 3 separate occasions, he never served any jail time. I've been unable to find out more details about this. Despite his convictions for assault, because he had fathered a child born in Ireland, he could not be deported. Farah was violent towards Kathleen and repeatedly beat her. On Sunday the 20th of March 2005, St Patrick's weekend, Linda and Charlotte, Kathleen and Farah had all been out in Dublin city centre drinking heavily. Upon their return to Kathleen's flat at Richmond Cottages, Summerhill, they also took ecstasy. Linda and Farah were sitting together on a small sofa in Kathleen's flat when he began touching Linda in a sexual way. He grabbed hold of her waist, refused to let go, and started whispering in her ear. Kathleen started screaming at him, and when he refused to leave Linda alone, a verbal altercation followed, during which Kathleen allegedly instructed her daughters to kill Farah. Linda and Charlotte then attacked their mother's boyfriend. Charlotte struck first using a Stanley knife before Linda attacked, repeatedly hitting Farah in the head with a hammer. Meanwhile, their mum Kathleen watched but did not participate in the attack. In a matter of moments, Farah was stabbed and beaten to death. Then apparently, on the instructions of Kathleen, Linda and Charlotte dragged Farah's body into the bathroom to begin the grisly procedure of disposing of his body. They decided to cut him into pieces. His head and limbs were severed using a kitchen knife and hammer, and his genitals were hacked off. Over 5 hours later, the 3 women put his body parts in multiple black plastic bags before making several trips to Dublin's Royal Canal to dispose of his dismembered body. In an attempt to avoid identification, they decided to dispose of his head separately. CCTV footage showed the sisters eating breakfast with what is believed to be Farah's head in the bag that they carried with them. They then boarded a bus to Tulla, where they walked through the Square shopping centre and onto Sean Walsh Memorial Park. They then buried his head in a field. Meanwhile, Kathleen disposed of the murder weapons in a nearby pond. A number of days later, Linda returned to the park and retrieved the head. She put it into her son's school bag and transferred it to a field in the Killinarden estate, where she broke the head up with a hammer before burying it again. She would later move the head once again, putting pieces in rubbish bins around the Phoenix Park area. The whole gruesome crime came to light in a fittingly gruesome way when, 10 days later, members of the public spotted Farah's leg. He was still wearing a sock, and it was floating in the canal near Croke Park. Divers soon discovered most of the rest of his body in an additional 7 parts. The injuries that Farah endured were so extreme that police initially thought that his murder may have been a ritual killing. However, after appeals in the media, he was identified by one of his friends who recognised the t-shirt found on his torso. This witness, who was the first to connect the missing Farah with the 3 Mulhall women, was paid a substantial reward by Crime Stoppers. The sisters and Kathleen were arrested in August 2005, but they denied any knowledge of the killing. They were released and the investigation began to stall. However, a couple of weeks later, Linda contacted investigating officers and admitted her involvement in the crime. The police took a voluntary statement from her in August 2005 and went on to search Kathleen's flat in Summerhill. They found bloodstains that were later confirmed to match Farah's DNA. Following Linda's confession, Kathleen fled the country. In September 2005, the sisters were arrested along with their father, John, who was released shortly afterwards. The sisters were charged with murder, to which they pleaded not guilty. Their father, John, took his own life in Dublin's Phoenix Park shortly afterwards. He is not believed to have been involved in the murder. The trial began in the autumn of 2006 at the Central Criminal Court in Dublin. The court was told how both sisters had problems with drugs and alcohol and had a particularly tough upbringing. Justice Paul Carney stated that it was the most grotesque killing that has occurred in his professional lifetime. Farah Noor's head and genitalia have never been recovered. During the trial, both sisters insisted that their mother was not physically involved in the killing, but also stated how Kathleen had been urging them on, asking them to kill him for me, believing that if not, Farah would soon kill her. After 18 hours of jury deliberation over 4 days, Charlotte was found guilty of murder and given a mandatory life sentence. Linda was given a 15-year sentence for manslaughter after the jury accepted her defence of provocation. They were both sent to Mountjoy Women's Prison in Dublin. Linda appealed the severity of her sentence on the grounds that it was passed without psychiatric and probation reports. The appeal failed, with the Court of Criminal Appeal finding the sentence to be appropriate. Charlotte requested leave to appeal her conviction on the grounds that Justice Carney had put pressure on the jury to reach a verdict, even though the foreman had indicated they were at deadlock. This appeal also failed. In December 2007, it was discovered that Kathleen was living in Shepherd's Bush, West London, under the name of Kathleen Ward. She was in a relationship with a man from Sierra Leone who had a previous conviction for sexual assault. Kathleen returned to Ireland in February 2008 and was charged with, among other offences, 2 counts of giving false information to police about Farah's whereabouts, also withholding information and impeding an arrest in a murder investigation. She would have faced more serious charges, but her daughters refused to testify against her. Kathleen was sentenced to 5 years in prison. Farah's mother, who could not afford to travel to Ireland for the trial, said that she could finally find some peace following the convictions and that Farah's body had been laid to rest at Dublin Cemetery. Kathleen was released from prison on the 25th of October 2011 and remained living in Dublin. In 2018, she announced that she was dying of lung failure. Linda was released in January 2018 and is also living in Dublin. However, it was reported that the two are no longer in contact. Meanwhile, Charlotte, who stabbed Farah more than 20 times with a kitchen knife, remains behind bars, where she is serving a life sentence. That concludes today's case. As always, please leave any comments down below. Thanks very much for listening to The Crime Reel. Stay safe. Goodbye. Psst. The first time Queen Elizabeth visited Ireland was in 2011. For someone that has travelled the world, I was surprised at this fact. Goodbye.